Hi, welcome to Teaching Moments. Today I'm going to do a language arts curriculum review with you. So language arts has a lot of parts to it. There's reading, spelling, handwriting, grammar, and then writing of like essays and papers. I have already done a Barton reading and spelling curriculum that you can check out if you'd like to. So today I'm mainly going to focus on grammar. And within the curriculum that I've used, it teaches about writing of the essays and poems and things like that. So I'm going to give you this review from two perspectives. The first perspective will be from me. My name is Hillary. I homeschool my 4 children, and they all have dyslexia. So I love language. I'm a writer. I have a blog. If you guys want to find this review on a blog post, you can go to shiningtheloveofjesus.wordpress.com. And I love to write. I love to write informational things and stories and poems and all sorts of stuff. So I am a writer and I love language. I also love the science behind it, like the why. Why do we spell it that way, or why do we use a comma here? And I just love all things language. I was one of those weird kids in school that loved to diagram sentences. I found it really fun. And actually when I became a homeschool mom, that was one of the things I look forward to the most, was when I could teach my kids how to diagram sentences. But it turns out I ended up having a love-hate relationship with the language arts because I had my oldest daughter. I started teaching her grammar, and she was a struggling learner for language. So it's not that I hated to teach language. I hated watching her struggle so bad. Something that brought me so much joy brought her so much heartache. So my second perspective is going to be from the perspective of my daughter, the struggling learner. So she is 17 years old and a junior in high school. And last year, she was diagnosed with severe dyslexia. I had known since she was in about 2nd or 3rd grade, I suspected that she had dyslexia, but I never got her tested. I didn't know what to do about it. I was completely at a loss. So we kind of just continued to go about life. It wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago that I really started to dive into what is dyslexia, how can we help, and that's around the time that I also found Barton reading and spelling. But we didn't start our journey out that way. We started our journey out, I started teaching her with A Beka books. So A Beka starts out with letters and sounds. They use that for kindergarten through 3rd grade. This is one of my kids. I think, oh yes, 2 of my kids have used this, and I think my 3rd child started to use this actual book. The books might appear different now, though. They are probably have updated them since then, but this is you get the idea. So I started with A Beka, letters and sounds, and they teach the short vowels and how to read the short vowels really well. It wasn't until they started teaching the long vowels and multisyllable words and vowel teams that it started to get confusing. I felt like my kids didn't understand when they were to use what sound, and I didn't feel like there was a lot of explanation for that from A Beka. So it got confusing. And then at 4th grade, and then if they don't have a good understanding of how to read the word, they're not going to have a good understanding of how to spell the word. So then in 4th grade, A Beka switches to grammar, which makes perfect sense. By the time they've reached 4th grade, they should have a solid understanding of how to read and spell with the words, the basic foundations. If they do not, if your student does not, please get them some help. It's actually, the statistics are about half or a little over half. Actually, I think it was over half of all students are not reading at grade level by the time they're in 3rd and 4th grade. They're reading below. So get them the help that they need. The sooner you get some intervention going, the better it's going to be. But at 4th grade, they start learning grammar from A Beka. So here is the grammar book. Again, probably redone by A Beka by now, but this is the idea of the 4th grade grammar book. I really like the content of what A Beka uses to teach the kids. I feel when they're reading a paragraph, trying to figure out where to put the commas, or trying to read a sentence to figure out where the verbs are. I want them to have good content that they're reading, family-friendly things, and A Beka does that. They use biblical examples, not a lot, but some. They also use like science or nature kind of things or historical events in their content, and I appreciate that about them. I really like that. I think that this language is a good curriculum for a non-dyslexic student and someone who doesn't struggle with grammar. I have heard that A Beka's curriculum is about a grade or two above the normal curriculum that you would see. So just make sure your student isn't getting lost, and if they're not understanding, then be sure to slow it way down. So that's what I did with my daughters. We slowed way down. I was just trying to get her to understand the basics, but she was still struggling. For her, she said that A Beka was hard to understand. She didn't get the concepts, which made her frustrated. So then she would come into class frustrated, which would make it harder for her to understand the concepts, and then it was just this cycle. So we switched from A Beka to Saxon Grammar. This is Saxon Grammar, 7th grade. This is the student text. There's a student workbook and the teacher guide. We ended up not doing Saxon for very long. I think it was less than a year. I didn't like the content of the sentences and stories that they were reading. And for my daughter, she felt like it was long and stressful and laborsome, and it wasn't very helpful. And I can tell it wasn't very helpful for her. So since both of us didn't really like it, it wasn't a fit with us. So we switched. Again. We switched this time to Rod and Staff. If you're not familiar with Rod and Staff, it comes from an Amish community. So they do have biblical references, actually quite a few biblical references, and they're conservative, which I love both of that. They also talk about brother so-and-so from time to time because that's their community. But I really do like the content that they have. I also liked that they broke down the lessons really well. Like in the younger grades, I felt like they broke it down almost too much. But I'd rather have them break it down too much than not enough. Because if you understand a concept, just flip on by it and go to the next one. So that was the 7th grade book I showed you. But here's the 3rd grade book. This is the student text. This is the teacher guide. Within the teacher guide, you see those white squares. Those are a picture of what the student is looking at. And then on the side, you have the teacher notes. They also have worksheets, extra worksheets. If your student isn't getting a concept, they can do a worksheet on it that will hopefully help them to catch up, to understand what's going on. So I like that they have the extra worksheets that they can do. And then they also have a test booklet. Another thing I liked about Rod and Staff is they're very reasonably priced, really reasonable. Since it is an Amish community, they don't use the computer or the websites. So someone has set up a website for them. So you can get Rod and Staff curriculum online. I've also seen Rod and Staff being sold at Mardell bookstores if you wanted to go there to find them. Within the Rod and Staff curriculum, they do teach them how to write stories and essays and letters, things like that. But they also have these nice little books. Also, the Amish only go up to about 8th grade, I think it was. I didn't think I found anything in 9th grade. So it's 8th grade and below. But I did see these books also. There's poetry pointers, learning essay writing, which I did use this a little bit with my oldest one, and short story writing. And it really gets to the point of writing if you wanted some extra stuff on that. So we used that for a while, and I'm still using that with my younger children. So Barton, as I've done the Barton review, I've let you guys know that Barton doesn't actually teach grammar, but they do teach grammar concepts. Like they'll teach them to find the who phrase of the sentence. Well, we know that the who phrase is a noun. And they teach them the did what phrase of the sentence. Well, the did what phrase easily becomes the verb. But Barton reading never makes that transition for you of a who phrase is a noun. But once the kids learn the who phrase and the did what phrases and the where phrases and how to pick those out, learning the actual grammar names of them is so much easier. And so two of my kids have been taught, they weren't taught any other grammar, they just did Barton and then they started doing grammar, and that transition was so much smoother for them than it was for my oldest. So she really felt that Barton was best for her, and the phrases were hard for her at first to understand because she kept going back to the old way that she learned them. But once she stopped and really learned the way Barton was trying to teach her, it really helped her. And Barton gave her the confidence to learn to like to read again. She started to hate words and she started to hate writing. But after doing Barton, it gave her the confidence, and now she likes to read and she loves writing. So like I said, I didn't know at first that Barton didn't teach grammar. I thought that they did. And then we were a couple years into it and I realized that they didn't. And I panicked. I really panicked because by this time I think she was in 9th grade. She might have been in 8th, but I think she was in 9th or getting close to 9th grade. And I was like, I've got to find her some grammar. And so I was doing research and I was thinking to myself, what does she really need help with? What is going to be practical usage in her life too? So I decided I wanted to work on her punctuation and her capitalization. She'd been through the basic grammar stuff for quite a while now. And I really wanted her to get how to do the punctuation and capitalization so she can write a resume or do a report or things like that she might need to do in her life in the future. So after doing some research, I found out that colleges really like Jensen's punctuation. And since that is something that I was wanting her to learn, I thought that would be a good curriculum for her to do. So we got Jensen's punctuation, and right away I noticed it is for an older audience. It is for high schoolers. I can tell that for sure. I do think that Jensen's punctuation is good curriculum for students that need reminders of the things that they learned in elementary and middle school, but at a higher level. With my daughter, it was okay with her, but the wording I could tell was tripping her up. So I ended up going online and finding the same concepts that they were teaching in here. I found the concepts online in a simpler form, and I taught her that way. And then after she did a couple worksheets in the simpler form, we went back here and she would do the worksheets in here again, and then she would understand it better. But I was worried that I would insult her intelligence because she was a high schooler and I was giving her a simpler form. But if it's getting them to understand the concept, that's what's really important. As soon as they understand the concept, you can bring them right back up to level much easier. But the main thing is you want them to understand the concept of what they're doing. So don't be afraid to make it a little more simple for them if wording is what's tripping them up. One last thing that I wanted to note, or that my daughter wanted to pass on to you guys, is that she loved the fact that I was teaching her because I didn't get mad at her when she didn't understand something. We would just slow down. We would work it out together. And she wants to remind people to teach your students with kindness and with patience, and don't explode on them. It's not that they don't want to learn. They do want to learn these concepts. They do want to understand. But some students are just struggling with it. So please be patient when you're teaching them and teach them with kindness, and don't get mad. It doesn't help anyone. Getting mad makes things 10 times worse for everybody. I will say, as a parent teacher, having 4 dyslexic students that I have been teaching, it's nothing like learning, nothing like teaching a struggling learner has grown my patience. I've learned to just calm down, just wait, and just be patient. And and meet them where they're at with what they know, and we go on from there. There's been many days when I haven't been able to do my full lesson plan because we're still working on this one concept, but that's okay as long as they get that one concept. We just pick up where we left off. So that is my little bit of an unusual perspective on language arts curriculum. Oh, I also wanted to mention that with punctuation, my daughter felt like it was just a bunch of lines and dots to her that were supposed to mean something, but they didn't really mean anything to her. And so she needed to learn what they meant. But she did get what they meant eventually, and she's still working on it a little bit. But I also want to thank my daughter for being courageous and sharing with all of us her journey in grammar. I know it's been a tough one, but thank you so much for sharing it with us. We hope that this has helped you in your journey to be able to pick a curriculum and also to help any struggling student that you have. So thank you for watching.